I'm Philip Shane, a documentary filmmaker and a huge fan of the video game Myst. I was blown away by this game, and Myst for me was, for games, what Star Wars was for movies. Never had seen anything like it. It was just completely swept away into this whole other universe. Take the story of these two brothers, Robin and Rand Miller, and a few of their colleagues living in this double-wide trailer in the woods outside Spokane, made a video game that became the most popular game in the world.
Myst, the best-selling PC game of the decade.
Nonetheless, two guys with very limited means and very limited experience. One day they wound up on stage with Steve Jobs.
And it's my great pleasure today to welcome Rand Miller on stage, the creator of Riven.
Thank you. I got to start this off by telling you guys.
I played Myst when it came out in 1993. It was unlike any other game I'd ever played. It was more like being in a movie. What we think of now as virtual reality, it was kind of like that, just in the sense that the visuals were so beautiful and the sound was so fantastic. Initially, you're just alone in this world, and it's a bizarre, surreal, beautiful, but also a little bit spooky. And the story of who's there and how the world was made slowly unravels as you go through it. In making documentaries, my goals are to honor people who inspire me.
That is my first actual computer.
Whoa! And you built this?
I built it.
And help people appreciate someone or a group of people who did something extraordinary that people either don't know about or don't know the whole story.
It also contributed to my failures in college, because I would much rather have been hacking around this thing than doing anything in school.
When I did Myst, like the Myst music, I was working with, one piece of hardware, one hardware synthesizer that was about this big.
Here's two brothers with an incredibly exciting, inspiring life story. Their life was completely transformed by this work of art that they poured their heart into. Most people don't even know who they are. I want to bring you in to meet them, but there's all these other people. People like Steve Jobs, who are famous, but also all the people we don't know very much, who were a part of making not just the Macintosh, but all the technologies. It was essential to the very creation of this game.
HyperCard, what is it?
Here's a button on this wheel. So if I touch on that, it's going to other wheels. Buttons or links can be used to express thematic threads running through information.
I've had the great fortune to work on a bunch of documentaries over the past 30 years. I was always fascinated by creators. I said, has anyone made a documentary about you guys? No, and they just seemed confused by the whole idea. And I said, could I? And they were like, yes. Then they said, I don't know if you're interested, but we just finished a game. We're about to release it.
Today is a crazy day. Not as crazy as yesterday, but crazy. We're launching Abduction tomorrow at 7 a.m. So yeah, I'm running on a lot of adrenaline.
And we are beginning our next project. Are you interested in following that? I was like, are you kidding? They called us geeks. They called us nerds. And one thing that makes us geeks is obsession, passion for details, for systems, for stories, and for genius. We are compelled to solve these puzzles and to explore these worlds. And if you know what I'm talking about, I think you have a sense of what this movie's about. I really appreciate your help in making it happen. Get your rewards, and I really do want to hear what you think, no matter what level you can contribute at. This is a movie by a community for a community. Let's share. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Fireside chat. The fire is just off screen. As in all the good movies, and in video games as well, there's a whole world painted beyond the frame, and that's where we are. That would have been a good title. Well, Beyond the Frame. My Beyond the Frame, Beyond the Name. My name is Philip Shane, and I am a documentary filmmaker. I am your host for the evening and also the guest. So that's kind of fun. I hope you enjoyed that trailer. I want to give a quick shout out, and I would love it if in the chat you guys would just send some love to a lot of the people who are working on this project are here in the room. From that trailer, the editor was Ben Lewin. He's an incredible editor. Kevin Hastings on the sound. Kyle Kelly, my cinematographer, director of photography, is absolutely amazing. So the really beautiful stuff in there was by him, and the kind of shaky iPhone stuff was me. And Katie Postma is here with us, also running the questions, and I have a whole ton of buddies out there here to make this a fun event for you. I'm here to answer your questions. It doesn't matter to me whether you don't have to be a backer to ask questions. And in fact, if you haven't backed yet and there's something you want to know that would make a difference between you and doing that, backing our Kickstarter, that would be fantastic. We are down to the wire on the Kickstarter. We're currently at, I see, checking the tote board, 156,900. It's about to kick over to 157. We have to get up to 200,000. So doing some quick math. Do I still have the brain power to do that? That would be... no, I don't have the brain power. That can be your first question, the math. All right, let's get right to it. First of all, round of applause for everybody. Wherever you are, please, just a round of applause for everyone here. I have to treat this like a real room. Question from Saxy. How much of the documentary will be dedicated to each of the games? Good question, Saxy. Myst seems to be the linchpin, but each of the games along the way in Cyan's journey have contributed to the story arc. Saxy, you are a wise... knowledgeable about story. There's going to be a lot of questions tonight about will this or that be in the film. And I'm not being coy when I say we are still at the beginning, and so I can't say for sure. I don't know if anyone heard we did a panel last night with Rand and Robin, and I mentioned this just briefly. By the way, if you hadn't seen that, I recommend you go back. I learned a ton just listening to them. But fiction films, you hear about it. They're filming, they're in Tunisia, they're here, they're there. They've got a giant water tank in Los Angeles. And then, maybe 2 years later at most, usually, the movie comes out. And so you think it took a couple years to make the movie. But in fact, in a fiction film, they have spent years, many, many years writing the project sometimes. Documentaries are a little bit backwards because it's real life. We can't predict what will happen necessarily. Also, it just gives us the opportunity to shoot first and ask questions later, or shoot first and edit later. I definitely have some ideas, and I'll be talking about that tonight. I think some pretty cool ideas, some of which to carry off, will make the film really kind of unique, which is cool, and I think it should be to honor the subject that it's about. But also, depending on how well we do on the Kickstarter. So if you hear something you like, let's just make sure we get that thing funded. You can go to, by the way, the mystdocumentary.com is the website, and there's you can click right there and go right to the Kickstarter. You will be greeted when you go to that website, if you haven't been there, with a pretty awesome scene, just a quick thing, and you can go to Kickstarter. But in the chat, I believe also they're going to be pasting a direct link a bit later, something like that. So, Saxy asks, will how many of the games? I can't say. I can say that Myst and Riven are the focus. And one thing you have to do in a film, especially let's say if it's a 90-minute or 2 hours at most, you really have to focus. And so Myst and Riven are the focus. And I think everyone understands that's the genesis of the entire thing. I also know that Uru is incredibly important, not just to you folks. I know here at Mysterium, Uru is a touchstone for many of you, and in fact still a place you are. Some people may be in Uru right now watching, I don't know. If so, Thank you. It also happens to be really, and I think most of you know this, but I don't know, to Rand in particular, Uru is a pretty intense part of his life, and, ups and downs. And so it's an important part of the story. It also it's one of the many kind of technological revolutions that the Myst series lived through and is, pushing forward all the time. So that being said, that's that. Another thing I would say, though, what's important to me about the other games, 3, 4, and then 5, it comes back to Cyan and on and on. All the people that made those games, some of whom I was listening to in panels today, like you guys may have been, they represent what to me is one of the most beautiful parts of this story and will be part of this film, which is people ask, what's the legacy of Myst? And you can look at modern games and you can have a good time, looking at, I'm not an expert by any means on all the current games, but you could look at Fallout or, for instance, any open world game, and a post-apocalyptic world or a surreal place. You can find all these things that you're like, wow, Myst was really kind of the progenitor of these things. But really what's most important to me is the people that you guys have all, well, if you're here, it's likely you've played it. If you haven't, I recommend it. But then a lot of those people went into gaming careers and other forms of digital art or filmmaking. There's a tremendous connection between filmmaking and Myst. There's also an interesting connection between architects and Myst, and lovers of design and Myst, and certainly composers. So many composers have been touched by it. So I include all the the people that worked on those on all the games. For them, as you can imagine, I mean, I wish I could have done that, right? What an honor to have done that, and I'm really interested in their perspectives too. So I think by its nature, that would bring in some of the other games too in an interesting way that still ties it back to the main story, if that makes sense. We have thank you for the math genius in the chat room who has reported that $43,000 left to go on the Kickstarter. The Kickstarter is now $157,000. Thank you. Thank you. Keep it going. Karen asks, was there a particular historic civilization that you've learned inspired the brothers? This is interesting. I think, Karen, you asked this question last night and I didn't get to it, so good on you for getting it in here. Was there a particular historic civilization you've learned inspired the brothers or that they made reference to artistically? There will be more to come. I haven't gone as deep on that to be able to say with any kind of definitive thing. I do know that growing up, the brothers grew up all over the United States, the lower 48. Robin also lived in Hawaii. I'm not sure I feel like Rand may have been off to college at that point. Robin also lived in Haiti, in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, with the Mr. and Mrs. Or their parents. Traveled all over, and it's a fascinating, colorful story there. So I do know that certainly growing up in New Mexico, and anyone who's ever been to New Mexico or to the American Southwest, clearly the Native American people that live there would influence you. And Robin talks about that certainly as a young boy growing up and seeing all these incredible things. And it was wonderful that their parents really wanted them to understand and to get steeped in different cultures beyond their own. Also, in the Southwest, you have ancient Native American civilizations who have left. Having traveled there, it's kind of amazing, and I know that there's some we know have a connection to the people who created the rock art, the petroglyphs, and things like that. There are people that lived in cliff dwellings, Mesa Verde in particular, and so just these are sort of ancient, kind of lost civilizations, and so that's part of it there. So if anything, I would say definitely the Southwest is a big part of it. Jay the Stern, he's a fine fellow, by the way. Philip, as a filmmaker, could you talk about the connection between filmmaking or film stories and games such as Myst? Jay, this is a great question. I happen to know Jay, and Jay is a filmmaker himself, a wonderful filmmaker, and also a professor of film as am I on occasion. And he and I were actually talking earlier today, and one of the things, again, if you heard me maybe talking last night, or if you in some of the interviews I've been talking about this, the thing that made Myst so powerful, among the things to me, is that it was cinematic. And what's interesting is I know that, for instance, in modern games, a cinematic, I believe, is even just another term. I could be wrong about this. You can correct me, but it's like another term for a cutscene, a cinematic. And there are, obviously, movies have deeply influenced video games, and I am blown away by the ability that they've gotten now to have camera moves and editing and all this kind of stuff while you're playing in real time. When I went to play Myst, I think that for me and perhaps a whole lot of you, and you may or may not have thought about it this way, there's a strong connection between the way I reacted to Myst playing it for the first time and the way I reacted to Star Wars seeing it for the first time, both as a young person at different ages, but completely blown away. And so Star Wars, well, it makes sense. You go to a movie theater, it seems obvious. It was not obvious at that time at all that video games should be that way. I mean, when I was playing on the Atari 2600, they were awesome, and we had a blast playing them. I wouldn't call them immersive, and Myst was. So they really, Rand and Robin and everyone that worked on that game really started to see the connection, see how video games could move towards movies, but be their own thing. Nowadays I could say interactive, and it almost sounds like an old-fashioned word. Then it was like an interactive, movie, or it just seems insane. So yeah, I find it deeply fascinating, and I think one of the reasons people are swept into Myst is that it just had this, it had the feeling of an epic from the beginning. The logo turning, and I'm seeing it in my head, and I think you're seeing it in your head too. If I do this, if you've seen it before, the little globe turning around in cyan logo, the music, the credits. There was a making of on that came with the game, which Star Wars, I think, is one of the few movies I ever saw, certainly back then, that had a making of. So there's a big connection there. It's very, very interesting. And in this movie, we will be making a movie about that game, so there's actually going to be a lot of really cool feedback from the game back into the way I tell the story. So stay tuned for that. Matt from Utah, what is your favorite puzzle from Myst? This is interesting. I don't know that I would have a favorite, except this is about. So I have the thing that immediately comes to mind is not so much about the puzzle itself, which wasn't one of the more it wasn't full of spectacle or anything, but actually there's a couple. So the first one that comes to mind is the clock tower, and I don't want to give any spoilers, by the way, because I don't know who's in the audience. So there's a puzzle that involves the clock tower. And when you solve it, there is a sound and a little turning thing at the bottom. Again, if you know what I'm talking about, right? And I felt like I heard a sound behind me. And if you know the orientation of Myst Island, it seemed, you kind of could feel that. You're at one tip of the island. I feel like it's the southern tip or whatever, but I'm down at the end. I'm at the clock tower, and I felt like I heard a sound behind me. It blew my mind that now maybe this is common now in video games. I don't know, but the puzzles don't unlock a thing right there often, right? It's not like and then treasure or a door opens and you walk through. You clearly unlocked that door. It did something you don't even know what it did. And you don't know how significant it is or not. And later you're wandering back around the island and you look up and you see, to me, what I called it like a mountain with the big gear on top. And it looks completely different. It's open. And I was just like, whoa. This little puzzle that I had done with like little pulleys and stuff like that had basically changed this massive geological, mechanical feature at the other end of the island. So that was amazing. The other thing I really loved that they included sound as puzzles. That was incredible to me. That was bold, I felt. The fact that there is a piano in the spaceship, mild spoiler alert, but it didn't occur to me till literally the other day I was writing an update for the Kickstarter. The MystDocumentary.com will lead you to the Kickstarter. And I was just writing some of the things I remembered from the game, and I suddenly realized a spaceship with a piano. What? It never struck me as odd because it was, well, of course there's it fit the whole vibe of the game. But the fact that, and I was actually joking with the brothers the other day. I was like, so who builds a spaceship that's piloted by a piano or that sort of has a piano access device? Anyway, fun stuff. I could go on and on too, as I know you could as well. Matt from Utah. But good stuff. Lady Hummingbird, my question has to do with how exactly we will do our own Myst stories if we aren't videography savvy people. Very cool. So I'm not sure if you're asking about the backer level for my Myst stories, but I will say that for that, don't worry about it. We're going to take care of that. It'll be remote and stuff like that. We won't be able to travel to visit every single person, although that would be awesome. But the whole point about that backer level, which is very special, is I want to really honor those people and, almost say to you, as I do to everybody, but just because this happens to be a feature of that level and above, why are you here? Why do you want, what is it about Myst? What was your experience with Myst? How did it touch you? How does it continue to touch you? What does it mean to you that got you, to feel that this would be important, like I do, to make a film about and to tell the story and to put it in context of the world and the generations and all that kind of stuff. So we'll take care of that side of it. It's not so hard, but we can absolutely set out to do it. If you're not talking about that, and you're just talking about in general, for instance, I've been asking people, and I will continue to ask people, on Twitter, for instance, tweet, I'd love to hear. And a lot of people have been doing this volunteering. A lot of people have been emailing me, telling me their story. Like, people are compelled to tell me their story, and I am compelled to tell you my story, too. I'll put it in the movie a little bit. You can, I'm saying just tell us your Myst story in brief, Twitter size version with a hashtag #MyMystStory. People have been doing that. If you have some stuff, like the journal, or I don't know, the original box, or action figures, or things you made, or any physical thing whatsoever, or digital. It might be, I don't know, a digital file of a photograph or something like that you can upload. Upload it to Twitter with hashtag #MyMystStuff. And my favorite of all is talk about how you felt. How does it make you feel? What are the feelings you have from the game? And you can tweet those out. And these are just words you're just typing, so nothing complicated here, with hashtag #MyMystFeels. And I would ask you, if every time you do that, just to help us out for at least for the next 4 days, I think we have remaining, if you could also, include us at the Myst Doc, DOC, so we know you're there, and we'll make sure people see it. Otherwise, if you have any other questions, contact me through the Kickstarter, and there's going to be a whole lot more information coming when it's out, so we'll take care of it, because I want to hear it, and I want to share it. My Myst story is, by the way, at the, Katie's reminding me, it's at the $75 level and above, so check it out, themystdocumentary.com, or click the link in the chat. From Riam Plus, I see that, I apologize. So I see your name all the time, and I've met you many times, I believe. Am I pronouncing that properly? Katie will tell me. Hi, Philip. What do you think? Here it comes. It's coming in now. Yes. 3, capital Y, capital E, capital S. Thank you. Would everybody please give a round of applause to Katie Postma, who is running an unbelievable technological system here. If you put little applause emojis in the chat, that would be wonderful. We're getting more data in. Rium, R-I-U-M, stands for Riven. By the way, I am not sure how. Much to learn from Riam. Thank you for your question, by the way. You are incredible, and I believe you were in the video, and you were amazing. The opening of Mysterium. Hi, Philip. What do you think is the hardest part to convey about the Myst story? Oh, dude, what a good question. What is the hardest part to convey about the Myst story? Katie, let's leave that at the top. I want to come back. I'm gonna ruminate on that. I'm gonna let my subconscious work on that while I move along. I'll come back to that. That's a very good question. From Karim Dio, Coram Dio. The project is called the Myst Documentary, in quotes. Oh, by the way, because I went to film school, I do get to tell you, and I'm an editor, I get to tell you that feature films are generally underlined. The title is underlined instead of in quotes. That's not a critique, I'm just mentioning it. We reserve the quotes for short films. The project is called the Myst Documentary, but the Kickstarter page describes it as, quote, more quotes, a film about the lives of the famous brothers. I know where you're going. How much of the documentary is a biopic about the Millers, and how much will be centered on the Myst games themselves? So just to clarify, I'm not sure. I think you understand what I'm imagining about the film. Just when you say biopic, just to make it clear, it's not a biopic like there are actors playing it, and even they're not reenactments really. It's not that kind of thing. It's a documentary, but yes, a biographical documentary, maybe biodoc, maybe we would call it. I'm not sure. But how much is it about the brothers, and how much is it about the games themselves? That's an interesting question because, I would say for the most part, it's about how those two are tied incredibly deeply, right? I mean, I know what you mean. I think about, we could talk about the game and, just go off and talk about the game itself, and obviously talk about other people, which is I do want to mention that. It's very important. There will be it's not just the brothers. I never I can never say this enough. I don't love stories where they kind of have the hero of the film or the book or whatever it is as if that person just created that thing completely out of context. This film is like an attack on that very idea, to say there's no way somebody did that. And if you go to my website, if you haven't been there, you don't know any of the films I've done. If you go to Philip Shane, Philip with one L, Shane, S-H-A-N-E, philipshane.com, you can just see some of my other movies and television documentaries that I've worked on. You will see faces of famous people, because I love to do biographies about people who inspire me, or I love to get hired to work on those. So you'll see Albert Einstein, for instance. And yet, if you watch the movie, that documentary I did for History Channel, I think you'll really see that really what I aim to do is, absolutely, you learn about this amazing guy, Einstein, but you really learned a whole lot about his wife, his family, all the other scientists. You learn about people in America as well as Germany. You learn about people, I mean, it just goes on and on and on. So that's interesting to me. But people are the story. It's kind of like learning how what they did influenced the game. So it's deeply tied to the game, if that makes sense. Another from Coram Dio. How long in minutes do you expect the documentary to be? 2 hours, somewhere between an hour and a half and 2 hours, generally. So to my friend Jay, a fellow filmmaker who's here, as well as other filmmakers I've got, and other filmmakers who I don't know you, but you're in the audience. I am often by trade an editor. Often it's sometimes also a producer, director, whatever, but like an editor. And I like to remind people, and I don't think you were necessarily implying this, but that the duration of the number of minutes of a film, if you're making a film, should be treated like the score in golf, where the lower the number, the better, and not like, let's say, baseball, where the higher the number, the better, right? So it will, whatever the length is, just because it's longer doesn't mean it's better. It's going to be an unbelievably tight, because I do specialize in that, it's important to me, really, really rich, engrossing film, so that when it's over, it's one of those movies where you're like, oh, I didn't know it was so long. So you just lose track of time. So that's it. So let's say it'll be a time warp. How, here's CJ Hercules. Is your Hercules? CJ, can I say? Katie would tell me. How much of the making of Uru and its complex history will feature in the documentary? So again, in fact, I'm probably going to, let me make this maybe the last one I do that just sort of begins with how much of the film will be blank, and to say, I don't know. I would like to see. That being said, I think one of the amazing things about making a documentary is I often feel fortunate. I get to see all this stuff. I even get to ask all the questions. And I get to read all this stuff. And I get to, and it just, I spend years making this thing. So for me, the documentary is like years and years long, and it's incredibly engrossing because like I'm actually in it or whatever. And as a film watcher, obviously, the extras and things like that, just like, there's, if it's a movie I love, I can't get enough of it. And so I know we will generate an enormous amount of fascinating material, and I really will work to get things out that, if there's something that's like just amazing and it just doesn't fit within the documentary, it might be amazing in itself, but it's sort of, it just kind of ruins the flow or whatever like that. I really do want to find a way to put that out. And I know that there are communities that are interested in particular things. And so there's no reason why it's, we won't be able to have extras or even a whole special, a little featurette or things like that. We also, one of our levels, and maybe Katie can remind me of which one, there's a level where we'll have sort of a book, a commemorative book. I'm not exactly sure what it'll be, but the idea of it is that I know we always have so many interviews, for instance, and we only, a small fraction of them make it into the film itself. And so I could just say this. My aim in making films is to make the film as good as films that I go see, of course, but also to give the audience everything I want as an audience member in other people's films. I love everything I own. There's a billion film books back there as well as a bunch of other stuff. So I could just say that it's very interesting for me to capture all this stuff, and let's find a way to get things. And if there are people, if there's things like people really, really, really want, I will work very hard to make those things available, right? The Lighthouse level. Okay, so $300 for the Lighthouse level, you get the book, the commemorative book, which will be, I was just mentioning, maybe extended interviews or full, maybe the transcript or something of that. And probably some pictures of during the making of the film, or little outtakes or things like that. We'll see. But it'll be nice. So T.S. Kimball asks, projects like this tend to involve quite a bit of logistical work. Yes, and I haven't even read the rest of the question yet, but already I'm thinking that's why I like puzzle games. Do you have any tellable stories regarding previous logistical work? And perhaps, I guess, I'm not sure what you mean, like when I ran the interstate trucking network or something, that would have been cool. Perhaps give a brief note regarding what the current situation is doing to your intended plans in that space. I worked at NASA, and therefore I did, by the way, logistical work in space. I was not personally in space, but I did do work that happened in space. Some good, some bad. But I know what you mean, like this whole pandemic and things like that. It's certainly impacting it. I don't, I think one thing that's wonderful about working on this project, and I hope that those of you who are contributing to it also have a little bit of bonus or silver lining cloud to it, which is this horrible thing will end. I do not know when, but it will, and it won't be like this forever. But it has created for me. I just mentioned NASA. I worked a little bit, started out kind of pursuing engineering and electrical engineering and aerospace and blah, blah, blah. And didn't end up pursuing that because, as you saw, math is not my thing. But I went into documentaries where I could continue to learn and do other things. It has created this fantastic challenge of, for instance, normally, and I had been doing it, interestingly, for a number of years, just as I've been sort of gearing up, getting familiar with this film, figuring out what the story might be, until I felt ready, and like, now we'll do a Kickstarter for it, because now I know how to do this. I would go out to visit people. I visited, I want to mention some other names. For instance, Chuck Carter, who worked on Myst, an unbelievable artist in his own right, has a fascinating life story and an incredible career. He was in the Navy. He worked on Myst. He then went on to work on Command and Conquer and like a whole bunch of other stuff. He also does illustration. I was literally talking to him this afternoon. He does science illustrations for National Geographic and for NASA and all kinds of other stuff. So he made a game called Zed, which you should definitely get, by the way, if you haven't played it. Beautiful, haunting, poetic, personal game. Highly, highly recommended. So while he was working on that, I was like, here's a perfect example of like, you know, the life, like, oh, he's working on a small project. It gives me a way to, see what someone's doing now at kind of the other end of their career in a way, and also allow me to reflect, you know, this kind of thing I can go back. It's a natural narrative point for me to cut from that back to when he was younger and how was Myst made when they were a small team then, and we can look at the differences and things like that. Anyway, I went there, I filmed a bunch of stuff, we did all kinds of really awesome stuff up in Maine, up in New Hampshire, and I've also been out to Spokane and Seattle and all that kind of stuff. So now, suddenly, everybody's working remotely, and I'm kind of remote. I've yet to get on a plane or something. I have begun doing what a lot of my fellow documentary filmmakers have been, which is kind of doing interviews and doing filming via Zoom, via this, via that. The point is to get it. We are problem solvers. Film producers especially, like, pride themselves on the ability to just get it done no matter what, on time, on budget, and beautiful on the screen. You know, so I'm pushing all that. If anyone out there knows, here's something I want to do, and I'll move on after this. I would love to, if I was filming someone working at a computer, which is a challenge unto itself, but some of this movie is that, someone working at a computer, right? I go there, I'd be in their office, even if they were at their home now, so I'd go there and I would film, and I would, or Kyle Kelly, my cinematographer, would be there filming better than me with a much bigger camera. We'd move around, right? We'd shoot B-roll, we'd shoot through the door, we'd come behind the screen and film them so we could see their faces, they're concentrating and working and things like that. All right. I can't do any of that. I can talk to them by webcam like you and I are doing right now. Kind of cool. I wonder, and I've talked to some really brilliant people who are like at the top of the video broadcast world, and no one quite knows how to do this exactly yet. And I don't think a lot of people have tried. Can I use an indoor drone with a good enough camera on it? And can I control it over the internet from where I am? Or if not that, then maybe the person who's in the room. I just think, imagine if I was able to film with a camera here and I was working at my computer and, like, you know, just the drone just starts moving around. Like, basically it's a virtual cameraman. I think that'd be cool. It's in my science fiction books that I've read, so I don't see why it shouldn't happen. Give to the Kickstarter and we'll crack that. There'll be a whole new breakthrough in documentary filmmaking. I'm Jonathan Potts. I'm a documentary editor, and I'm just curious, what software do you edit on? I edit on all of them because I love to mix and match. I do work a lot in Avid, largely because it is kind of, the documentaries I do have many, many hours, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of footage, sometimes thousands. For a long time, Avid was the one that handled that the best. But I'm very excited by Final Cut. Final Cut has like went through a crazy transformation. We dumped it. People love it now. Final Cut 10, FCPX, and Premiere, you know, is there also. So they all do different things. So I happen to work in Avid, but by no means do I mean that is a like a endorsement of that over other things. I think you should learn them all, actually. Just like learning multiple spoken languages or multiple programming languages or anything like that. You actually learn the whole art a lot better when you feel it. You can kind of do it through different ways of interpreting it. Great question, Jonathan Potts. And kudos to you for being a documentary editor. Can you do it, Colorado 72, can you do a docu-series? 2 hours doesn't sound long enough. I agree. We'll see. But let me add, then this seems almost heretical sometimes. It doesn't mean it's better, right? Just because you have more stuff doesn't mean it's better. There is more stuff. And the challenge is not that there's too much stuff. The challenge is creating a real-time, movies are linear real-time experiences as much as you could do other kinds of things, of course. You could make a video game or you could do a non-linear movie and interactive, I don't know, something. But for the most part, the movies we're talking about is a linear thing. And so doing that in a way, it's just like writing a song or an opera or something like that. It really has to have a flow and a rhythm and it has to be emotionally powerful. And you come out transformed. And then you have all this other stuff. So the challenge is how to do that way. But, podcasts can be, I would think of it more that way. I mean, not at all saying either I'm doing a podcast, but the idea that you then have all these different modules, I feel like they'd all be really interesting to make. And it might be that, we have this incredible thing of some element of the story that a lot of people really want. And it would there would be some additional expense in making that. I don't know, maybe we would do a mini Kickstarter for that or something like that. Again, I'm just putting it out there. My goal is to give people what they want. If I have incredible things, I don't see any point in holding on to it for myself. Kickstarter is up to 158,450. Thank you, whoever. If you are here and you went there, and you, fantastic. We really appreciate it. If we do not, by the way, I'll say again, if we don't get to 200,000, all the stuff I've talked about just goes down a drain and into history. As like a road, sometimes you're riding on the highway and you see a ramp and then the ramp just ends because they never completed that road. Well, first of all, I love that kind of thing, and second of all, that would be this. I don't want that. I want the road to open. So help us get there. themystdocumentary.com. Life is a highway, Katie has written it. Thank you. Here's a question from YouTube. This comes from, actually, this is interesting. It's coming in as a different route instead of from Katie. I'm just happened to be glancing at one of my other great colleagues, Josh Samuels, a scholar in his own right. Says, we have a great question from the YouTube chat. Brent Gerganus asks, have you considered your documentary being part of Myst lore in much of the way that the development of Myst became part of Myst lore within the history of Uru, something meta like that? I leave that to you guys. That would be cool. Yeah. Woo. Thank you, Brett. I will think about that. From Brainiac, is Philip aware that the Presto folks made the same comparison to Star Wars when they got the chance to make Exile? Which is Myst 3, right? One called it the equivalent of George Lucas asking you to make the next movie. And Katie said, oh, that's cool. She didn't know that either. I did not, but I concur. Totally random thing. I just want to mention something. I don't know if anyone's asked what's my favorite video game, and there aren't a lot of games. I haven't played like a vast amount of games, and I can't say I have an enormous amount of favorites. Myst and Riven in particular are just way the heck up there. But there is a Lucas Arts, right? When Lucas started to make games, there's a game called Ball Blazer, which eventually I think had its title changed to Ball Blaster, or it was the other way around. It wound up Ball Blazer. Anyway, look it up. I can hear I've started it because I can hear the music playing in my head. It's awesome, fun, sort of a basketball soccer game. Have you, I just read that question from Brent. From Killamus, two-part question. Remind us when you first asked Rand and Robin if you could make the documentary. That was in 2016, I believe it was. first half of 2016-ish, at the kill screen. You can look it up and find it, actually, and I think you can even find pictures of it. I don't know if the actual video is online of the speech or anything, but or the panel discussion. It was the Kill Screen conference. It was in Brooklyn. And the second part of that question, approximately when do you think the documentary will be done? Well, we're aiming for 2 years. So, Katie, remind me what the, the date is. I don't even know what date it is. Another strange thing about lockdown, about pandemic time, is it's like, what day is it? I don't know. December 2022. From Theo, will you get into any of the stories of people who met and formed relationships in Uru we've been together 7 years. Oh, wonderful. Or groups of Uru explorers who later went on to create the fan ages in the Uru shards. I think you would all agree. Uru is a documentary, or, could easily be a documentary or a docu-series unto itself. I don't know. It certainly sounds fantastic. The way I look at these things, by the way, is not a matter of sort of like, well, will I cover the entire thing? I have to often, I've done many, many films often that have biographical or historical type things. And often we go back in the day when you go to a movie theater, and you will again, we would screen the movie. And if it was a live screening or Q&A afterwards, people ask, well, why didn't you include this? And why didn't you include that? And I have to always say, a book can do that. Maybe a long series can do that. YouTube is actually particularly good at like just being insanely comprehensive. We're just going to get it all, and we're going to break it up into little pieces or whatever. A movie is what I'm making, by the way. Not a doc. You can call it a documentary because it's for all the reasons you call it a documentary, but I don't think of it that way. It is a movie. It's all true. It's real people in it. But it's a movie, and it feels like a movie. It is not an encyclopedia by any means. And the secret is to say, here is something which is important. So let's say Uru is important. What I'm eventually looking for is a way to find what is the most beautiful essence of Uru within the context of the whole story that's being told, and find, some moments from it that convey the feeling of certain things and the meaning of it, and see how it affected people. You can imagine Rand, thinking about it and meeting some of you and filming you and having little things. So if, I don't know, if you start to think of it that way, it's not so much, think of it less like covering in detail in great depth, as you might in an encyclopedia, which would be amazing, but more like maybe building a monument or creating a museum exhibit, or creating like an expression of the thing that's sort of like you walk through it and you really get a feeling for what it was. And there is nothing better, and this is true for any movie, but obviously documentaries especially, when nothing better than you were taken through such a powerful experience and given a glimpse of something that just seems so compelling to you. You go off and you learn more and more and more about it, or maybe you go and join it and become that. There's a movie called The 32 Short Films about Glenn Gould. I'll just shout it out as a random shout out. I never heard of Glenn Gould before. I think a lot of you guys, if you hadn't, you would really like him. He's an incredible guy. No longer around, but he was like a brilliant Canadian. Shout out to Canada. Prodigy, piano, concert piano performer, who went off into all kinds of other things. Anyway, it was just, and there's so many other movies that I've just set my life out on. One part of my life is just learning all about that thing that I learned about from that movie. If this movie does that for people, then, and I think it will, that would be great. How are we time-wise? 10 minutes, right? I'm trying to get to as many of these. I love these questions, everybody. From Aiden, how has transitioning a game to a documentary format been for you compared for your other documentaries? Another fabulous question. I love little questions like that just like, boom, blow up an entire... There's so much meaning packed into this little thing. There was an update I did... one or two updates back, maybe 3 at the most, on our Kickstarter. So here I'm telling you, by the way, go to Kickstarter and pledge. That would be fantastic. But by the way, if you go there, if you want a little bit more about how I take on that challenge of cinematically, which is the most important. This is a movie, as I said, cinematically doing something in the most boring way to say it would be teaching you how a documentary is made. You know, the movie, and you see this from the trailer, the spirit, the movie ultimately for me is going to be just overflowing with the spirit of geek. I don't know, you know, a lot of people say, oh, he's so passionate. He's so, whatever this is that I'm doing this, and the way you are when you're that thing, if you're really into something, that is what the movie is. And like, I want to know everything. And the thing is, I want to simultaneously convey something that is super cool to me. I want to learn all about it, but I also want to convey the enthusiasm to people who don't care at all. You know, it'd be amazing. Like, again, you go to a movie, sometimes if you go to a documentary or any movie, but say a documentary, and you come out, this happens to me all the time. I happen to be in a world of like extraordinary documentary filmmakers, and I get to see a lot, but I come out and I'm like, how did I never hear of this story? It might even be something that took place within my lifetime. It's like, how did I never hear of this person? I had no, you know, it's just like, woo. Sometimes bad or good. They're just like, woo. And so, but part of it is like, you know, if I can get, I often think about my mother as an example. A lot of people do that. Sort of like somebody who doesn't care anything about how a CD-ROM works and why it was an unbelievable leap of technology that even might seem a little bit quaint now. But, you know, I want to get in there, see that, learn, you know, I don't know, how hot does the laser have to be? How big are the dimples? Just, you know, we're not going to spend an enormous amount of time there, but to get in, and get out. As far as using, how do I convey how Myst is built and designed? How is a video game built? I think it'll be cool for us, for me, maybe. I don't know who's on screen or who's not on screen, but kind of essentially would like to take the documentary onto Myst Island and walk around with its creators. You know, maybe it's Rand and Robin, and Chuck is there, and some of the other people that worked on it, right? And it'd be amazing if they'd be able to say, oh, come over here, look, I did this. And look how cool that is. No one had ever done that before. Or I'm embarrassed by that, you know. We could pull up the grass and see the paths. One time I was at Cyan, actually, and while they were working in Unity, I guess it was, or anyway, they were working on some game, and whoever it was, I was just looking over their shoulder. All of a sudden, they hit some mode, and everything disappeared, and all you saw were like just these lines, right? Like a little, like a schematic, like an electrical schematic. Underneath the world, like there was this incredibly vivid world of rocks and trees and wind and sun, and all of a sudden it was gone, and there were just these glowing lines. I was like, that is so cool. So imagine, and it's important for understanding the structure, pulling up the grass and seeing that. Robin being able to tell us, you know, for instance, look at this particular place. When you cross this place, that is where I wrote this whole different piece of music, where the music shifts, you know, because you're getting closer, because you're there. Anyway, a little glimpse there. So yeah, the thing is, how do you explain something from one medium to in a totally different way? It's an awesome challenge. So, from Darnay, I liked Philip's point. Thank you. I'm just not going to read anything else. No. I liked Philip's point about all of the contextual elements contributing to the end product. Indeed. Is there a thread in the early preparatory work you've done so far that has spoken particularly powerfully to you as a storyteller? Yeah. Here's one. I'm just gonna. This could even be mild spoiler alert for the spoiler for the movie. I don't think it is. It's not like a mystery or something. But just the way I think about these things and how if anyone's interested in making documentaries. By the way, I love, you know, helping people understand that and you know, encouraging people to do so. We can always use more great documentaries. I was talking to Robin a few weeks ago, and just one of our usual sort of keep up. I, you know, have conversations, but there are also interviews I'm exploring, you know, and stuff like that, learning more and more of the story and how he thinks and what he did and all that kind of stuff. And I forget what it was, we were talking about Myst versus Riven or something like that. And it got us talking about how, he actually was talking about how, it's interesting. It's like there's a different vibe in Myst than there is in Riven. It's not neither good nor bad. It's just saying, Myst kind of has a more surreal, more playful thing, whereas Riven, what they went for there was they were like, okay, we're going to, there was some randomness, some, odd, freewheeling choices of, let's put a rocket there and a planetarium there, but also a really old library there and a giant clock tower, right? And all these different things, and old and new and natural and mechanical and so forth, electrical, and but whereas Riven, they wanted to go to the next level and sort of make everything integrated and all, take it to another level. And he's like, it's funny because a lot of the critique of Myst now, and back then, even more so then, just because people were talking about it a lot more, obviously, when it came out, was that, it's kind of silly, it's kind of goofy, there's these, almost like these toys placed, here's a temple, here's a ship. And he said, and yet Myst is the thing that is most remembered. Not just because it was the first. I think, it's special. And he said, I've thought about it for a long time, actually, and I'm paraphrasing here. It's not an exact quote, but basically he's like, that randomness is actually that surrealness, that playfulness, that sort of not take ourselves so seriously, combined with, very much taking ourselves seriously, that made it great in a way. And, I could just imagine beginning the movie. Someone mentioned a story arc. An amazing story arc would be, and you're now in the writer's room, essentially. It's just me here, and you. You can imagine beginning the movie with a sense of meeting Myst, hearing a lot of the criticism, having fun with it, saying, look at this wonderful thing, and playful, and look at all the things. Yeah, and haha, the funny thing was that, these things were a little bit silly. This was goofy. This was over here. They didn't have the technology to do this. The movies were really short, whatever. And then we go to Riven, and it gets deeper, and then, eventually we go to Uru, right? And these things just get richer and richer. And at the end, looking back on the entire thing and saying, wow, after all these games, after all this evolution of technology, of narrative, of story, of feelings, of generations of players, generations of programmers who worked on it, people coming, working on games now at Cyan, maybe first generation, like maybe their parents played it or even their grandparents played it. Anyway, it all comes around, and at the end, imagine Robin looking back and Rand looking back and saying, I think part of the magic was this thing that was just because we were young and had to do it fast and all this kind of stuff. That there's a magic, and that's sort of a lesson to all of us. So, imagine that. Last question. Well, you know what? Actually, we're out of time. Darnay said, that was an amazing answer. Oh, I'm so glad, Darnay. Thank you, Darnay. I hope all of you. I hope all of you felt that these answers were, if not amazing, interesting. I am available. Reach out to me anytime. I'm happy to talk about anything you're curious about the movie. You can contact us. There is a bit of a deluge of correspondence right now, so I work very hard to get back to everybody, but I will get every single one of you. I will go back to you as soon as I can. But also, if you can go to the Kickstarter, if you can, find a level that's good for you, that's great. If anything I said tonight seems like really awesome and you want to see it on the screen, or you want to own it, or you want to be able to watch it again, or you just want to know that it got made, if you can't, you're not able to, then you wait till it comes out or something like that. But everyone who's going to see this movie is only going to see it because a lot of people came together to make it, and we're approaching, 2,000 backers or something like that. That's incredible to me, and I'm really grateful for all of you. So please keep in touch. This is a conversation, like I say at the end of the trailer. This is a movie by a community. It's all the backers, and it's all of you who are listening now, for a community. That's us, and also the community of people who just want to learn new, amazing things that they never heard of. If they didn't know about Myst, wouldn't it be nice if they learned about it and about the Miller brothers and everyone else? So thank you. Let's share.